Hey, it's Craig. I just wanted to let you know that you can listen to Canadian History X early and ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime. If you're an elder millennial, you know her well. She's been a fixture of your TV since the early 2000s when she burst onto the scene to help contextualize what Heidi, Spencer, and LC were up to. From hosting to finding her voice on stage and online, she has found success thanks, in part, to her incredible gift for comedy. Her career has taken her all over the world, and through it all, she has never forgotten the special place Canada holds in her heart. I'm Craig Baird. This is Canadian History X Biography. Today I share the story of a prominent Canadian who was part of an improv group with Seth Rogen and Nathan Fielder in high school, and that helped her discover her love for entertaining. This is Jessi Cruickshank. Jessi's and my story begins in the same location, Calgary. She entered the world 2 years after me on July 17, 1982. And Jessi moved to Vancouver when she was 5 years old and called BC home until university, where she attended the University of Toronto. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because her inspiration for her future began much earlier, thanks to her mother, Joyce. She was the host of Alive, the Picture of Health, Canada's first network television health and wellness show, which aired on CBC. It was also seen in 30 countries around the world. And Joyce followed that up with the first television program for people over 50, The Best Years, later called 50 Up.
My mom was like pounding the pavement, raising money for her show, always on the verge of being canceled. It was a tough go for her, but she sustained a career on television for all of my childhood. And I think seeing that also normalized it for me in a way, like made me realize that that was a career that was viable.
Growing up in Vancouver in the 1990s, Jessi witnessed the entertainment industry all around her. The success of the Beachcombers in the 1970s and 1980s showed that British Columbia's Lower Mainland could be a true Hollywood North. And before long, other television shows and movies were using Vancouver as a backdrop, and it had an impact. From her elementary school being used as a film set for a month to seeing David Duchovny on a regular basis, it was all par for the course of Jessi's early life.
We would play soccer down by Jericho Beach when I was in high school, and David Duchovny used to walk his dog past our soccer field every Sunday. And the X-Files was the biggest show on television. So I'm sure I missed many, goal-scoring opportunities because I was just very distracted by David Duchovny walking his dog.
Along with early brushes with celebrity, Jessi learned entertainment was also a career option. And this is also when she learned that she had a gift for comedy by making her own family laugh.
There was this sort of idea that that could be a thing that you did, whereas I think you probably wouldn't find that as much in the middle of the country, perhaps. And I think for me, it was always being funny. I was never going to be the pretty one. That's sort of what I learned early on, but I could be the funny one.
When she reached high school, Jessi joined an all-male improv group at Point Grey Secondary High School.
I was the only girl on an improv team with Seth Rogen and Nathan Fielder, both on the same team. And people will often say, what was in the water at your school? And I don't have an answer, but I never really thought of it as Vancouver-based.
If the name of the school sounds familiar, it's because the film Superbad was based on the experiences of the film's writers Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg when they attended Point Grey. And the duo's production company, Point Grey Pictures, is named after it. Now, Seth first achieved success with the role of Ken Miller in Judd Apatow's critically acclaimed show, Freaks and Geeks. His appearances on the show helped forge a friendship with Apatow, who was impressed with his ability to improv on set. But for everyone in high school who knew Seth as the guy with bleach blonde dreadlocks, it was hard for them to believe that he was on an actual network television show.
If you had done a poll of Point Grey Secondary School and you had said, who will be the two young men from this school that will be Hollywood success stories, I believe Seth Rogen would have been bottom of the list, next only to Nathan Fielder. And when the premiere of Freaks and Geeks happened, all of us got together, all of like the point grade 12th graders sat in my friend Dan's living room and we watched Seth on Freaks and Geeks. And I remember thinking like, this is so weird. I'm just watching Seth be Seth, but it's on television. Like there was no difference between him walking through the halls in high school.
Jessi had also caught the acting bug while in school, and her first role was in the 1996 film For Hope. Directed by Bob Saget, the stand-up comedian and actor best known for playing Danny Tanner on the sitcom Full House, the film was about a young woman suffering from scleroderma. It's an autoimmune disease that at the time was unrecognized, and the story is loosely based on events that directly affected Bob and his family, and mainly his sister, Gay Saget, whom he lost to that disease 2 years earlier in 1994. He made the film as a statement of the frustration his family had been left with after his sister had been misdiagnosed and mistreated for the symptoms, so it was a deeply personal project for him. And the film premiered on November 17th, 1996 on ABC, and for the first time, Jessi was on screen in the role of Beth. After high school, Jessi went to the University of Toronto where she studied drama and English. And by the time she graduated, she very quickly realized that compared to the United States, there was not as many opportunities in Canada. So she set her sights on becoming a Much Music VJ. At the time, this was a great entry point into the world of entertainment, having launched the careers of George Stroumboulopoulos, Master T, Sukyin Lee, and Rick Campanella before her. Much Music, now called Much, launched on August 31st, 1984 as essentially a Canadian version of MTV. It helped showcase Canadian talent who would otherwise find a tough time getting exposure south of the border. And every few weeks while she was in college, Jessi would send letters to Much Music asking for a job, saying that she would literally work as an intern for free. And although she didn't get the internship, she did manage to find her way to a music channel.
I will scrub your floors. Please just let me in the building. Never got a reply. And so I think when I finally got the opportunity to audition for MTV and eventually was able to start somewhere in the business, that's when I realized the beauty of working in Canadian television.
And that means working with little to no budget, which forced Canadians like Jessi to do everything themselves. It was essentially a baptism by fire.
Early on at MTV, I pitched an idea for a segment. I wanted to talk to, this was like in 2007 for our Pride episode, I wanted to talk to senior citizens at a bingo hall about Pride, just to get their take. And the executive producer at MTV said, great, go make it. And I said, well, I'm 23 years old. I have worked in television for 6 months. I don't know how to make it. And he said, figure it out.
As a host on MTV Live, Jessi figured out how to watch the beta tapes, make edit notes, and cut the tape with the editor. It was a lot of work, but it taught her how to write, produce, and pretty much do everything by herself.
And I think that's why so many Canadians who start in Canadian television, who start in the industry in Canada, go on to succeed because we learn to do it all.
And Jessi got into the industry at the same time as social media was just in its infancy. Facebook had been around since her college years, and Twitter was just becoming a thing, but very quickly it became a place where one could directly connect with an audience. It provided Jessi insight into who was watching and helped her realize there wasn't much difference between talking to friends and talking to the audience through the cameras. And that shaped her conversational style and helped her connect with audiences even when she wasn't sure they were watching. She also had to be her own stylist, and Jessi took her first paycheck and bought a $400 tank top. It was an extravagance she had never done before nor since, but for her it was a big deal to be able to spend that kind of money on herself. Of course, the plan was to wear it on the air and then return it the next day, but things didn't exactly go to plan.
And the woman at the Holt Renfrew said to me, you can't return this. I saw you wearing it on television last night. And I remember thinking like, first of all, shoot, not going to get my $400 back. Second of all, you saw me wearing this on television? I was so excited that somebody was watching.
Jessi may have been surprised to know that people were watching her on MTV Live, but everything was about to change, thanks to a bunch of kids from Laguna Beach. Laguna Beach, the Real Orange County, was a reality television show which premiered on MTV on September 28, 2004. It focused on the personal lives of Lauren Conrad, Lo Bosworth, Stephen Colletti, Kristen Cavallari, and Taylor Torriero. It was a massive hit for MTV, and by 2005, Lauren Conrad, the show's star, had moved to Los Angeles. And that's when the network ordered a spin-off series. And The Hills was born as a way to chronicle the lives of Conrad, her housemate Heidi, her neighbor Audrina, and their colleague Whitney. And the show was another massive hit as 2 to 5 million viewers tuned in each week. And in Hollywood North, Jessi was about to ride that wave to a whole new level of fame thanks to a loophole in TV licensing. You see, at the time, Much Music was the only Canadian channel to have a music license, so MTV Canada could only have a talk license, which meant programming couldn't include music videos. But this turned out to be a blessing in disguise. MTV Canada launched The Hills the After Show as a way to contextualize the network's flagship series in order to fit the channel's mandate. It essentially became a place to discuss the program immediately after with input from studio audience members, callers, emailers, and webcam participants. It would feature Jessi and her new co-host, Dan Levy.
Our vice president of the network, Mark McInnes, he had this idea that after every episode of Laguna Beach, we'll just get Dan and Jessi to talk about it. It was based on sports post-game broadcasts, right? So he even got us a telestrator to draw on people's faces like they do, to draw on football games. And that was it. It was simply to fulfill Canadian content laws.
Meant to fill time, no one was expecting it to become a major hit. The first season didn't have a set, and Jessi and Dan simply sat on the floor drinking real martinis, with half their guests having a bit too much because it was filmed live on Friday nights at 10:30 p.m., and it quickly became a phenomenon. As ratings grew week to week, the decision was made that for the season finale, the doors would open to a live audience. And both Jessi and Dan worried that nobody would show up. They actually spent the morning texting friends asking them to come. And that night, 100 chairs were set up and everyone held their breath. But when doors opened, the first people to walk in were Toronto police, asking what was going on. And that's when Jessi and Dan Levy looked outside for the first time. At street level at 888 Yonge Street, at the doors of the historic Masonic Temple, there was a crowd waiting to get in.
There were thousands of people flooding Yonge Street trying to get into MTV Canada, into the building. And I remember Dan and I looking at each other being like, what's going on? Well, first we're going to be talking about Kristen's platform flip-flops, and then we're going to be dissecting Jason's goatee. It was ridiculous. Police had to come in and create barricades because so many thousands of people wanted to come in to the taping of the after show. And that was the first moment where I realized, okay, people are really actually watching this.
The Hills After Show was a bona fide hit, and MTV US took notice and bought the show. It became the first ever live simulcast television show made in Canada to air in the United States. And that's how Jessi's little show made Canadian broadcasting history.
So they started to broadcast our show, and we would do all kinds of funny experimental things on the after show. We had something called, and granted, these are all, it's mid-2000s, okay, so take it with a grain of salt, but we had a little tape piece called Minority Report, where we would point out the minorities who would appear in the background of scenes in Laguna Beach because it was so rare, right?
The success came at a price. What was okay in Canada didn't always fly in the United States. New rules dictated the content of the show, which made Jessi long for the previous freedom they had to experiment. And by the time The Hills and the After Show came to an end in 2010, Jessi's career was going strong, and Levy was to become the co-creator and star of the critically acclaimed Schitt's Creek. Jessi then moved to Los Angeles, and by 2012 she was co-hosting the CW series Oh Sit, a high-octane musical chairs competition alongside comedian Jamie Kennedy. And that new year, she opened on First Night 2013 with Jamie Kennedy. It was broadcast live on December 31st, 2012 from outside Grauman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood, and it quickly became infamous. The special had many technical problems, including microphone gaffes and communication issues, featuring scenes described as surreal, the very new year being counted in too late, and spontaneously ended with an impromptu fight breaking out on stage over the credits. Jessi was the sole bright spot as she interviewed guests throughout the show, such as Drake Bell and Olympic gold medalist Dawn Harper. In 2014, Jessi returned north of the 49 to host Canada's Smartest Person. CBC producers sorted through thousands of would-be geniuses to find the 32 contestants to cerebrally battle it out over the title over 8 episodes. She hosted the program for 3 seasons, as she was also traveling across Canada, giving motivational speeches for Free the Children events, having hosted We Day Alberta in 2012. And with her star rising, she began hosting major events including the Canadian Country Music Awards and the Junos, which she emceed for 4 years in a row. And that helped her make the realization that she was really more than a host. She said, "Being a woman in this business, I was always considered a host, even if the man standing next to me doing the same job was called a comedian and I was called a host." For the Junos, she had written her own jokes and monologues, so it didn't take much for her to write her own shows. She told the Calgary Herald, "If I can write jokes about Shawn Mendes for 4 hours or Brett Kissel, obscure Canadian artists, and crush it in a stadium, surely I can do it for myself." In 2015, she toured campuses in Canada with her one-woman show called Behind the Scenes, where she gave film screenings and gossip sessions. She stated, "I get to travel to colleges across the country and screen a free movie. On top of the free movie, it's a totally intimate one-on-one session with me where I've promised to divulge all of my secrets about people, things that I have witnessed in Hollywood, who's low maintenance and who's high maintenance." Just a few years later, in 2016, Jessi became a co-host of the daytime talk show The Goods, and she hosted segments on style and design.
Oh, what a joy. I had an opportunity to co-host a daytime talk show on the CBC, which I think was always my dream. I think that was like really all I wanted to do. And it was myself and Steven Sabados and Shahir Massoud, Andrea Bain. And it was my first foray into a daytime world because I had been doing late night on MTV.
Now, shifting to a daytime show also meant that the rules she liked to break in late-night television couldn't be broken. The audience was older, and there were standards that had to be maintained which didn't fit with Jessi's edgy sense of humor, and it took her time to adjust. Sadly, CBC announced that the series would be cancelled after 2 seasons, and the final episode aired on May 10th, 2018. But The Goods was nominated for a Canadian Screen Award for Best Lifestyle Program or Series at the 6th Canadian Screen Awards. But by then, Jessi had pivoted again, and her drive for innovation led to CBC literally giving her a camera and telling her to make what she wanted. And Jessi was going digital.
I think even at that time, the CBC sort of thought like, we'll throw it on Facebook. No one will see it. But God bless them. They let me do what I wanted to do. I went out and I did my first piece talking to older women at a senior citizen home and created just like a 4-minute silly piece. And over the weekend, it had 1 million views.
Her online presence was fully cemented, which was a good thing because her personal life was also changing. In 2014, she married her husband, Evan. The two had met when Jessi was auditioning for MTV. She'd been determined to put together a tape, and her dad had a friend with a production company in New York. When she landed at the office, she expected to find some slick old man. Instead, she found a young, tall, handsome film editor named Evan. He took her to a cool little restaurant on the Lower East Side where Cameron Diaz and Justin Timberlake were quietly eating around the corner. The rest, as they say, is history, and halfway through her time at The Goods, Jessi found out she was pregnant.
Prior to that, I had hosted late night shows or a big shiny floor game show. And like, you can't really walk around, I was hosting Canada's Smartest Person. I couldn't really do that, like fearing that my water was going to break. But a daytime show, you're really connecting with people and you can share sides of yourself and your personal life that you can't in any other television context.
Jessi expected to have the baby, then get back to work. But then she found out she was pregnant with twins. And in her words, her life flashed before her eyes.
I was not prepared for that news. I was not prepared to be a mother of twins. I was so career driven at that time. And it derailed me in a way that I wasn't ready for. I still tried to do it all. I went back to work on my daytime talk show 5 weeks after birthing twins.
And as much as The Goods had been a safe place for her, it was still hard to be a working mom with infants.
We had to have 3 of the exact same dress for me because my breasts were leaking so heavily throughout the taping of the show, I had to switch out the damn dress. If that is not a sign that you should not have gone back to work, I don't know what is. But I will never forget those 3 red dresses hanging in my dressing room.
As a new mother, Jessi wanted to show others online what motherhood was really like.
I think I posted something about, the realities of new motherhood. And it received such a tremendous response from moms who had grown up watching me, who were in the same position as me, who were saying, thank you for being honest, for sharing the real, truth about motherhood.
That reaction inspired Jessi to share more of her own experiences shaped by her unique sense of humor. And she gave birth to a digital show called New Mom Who Dis. Jessi said in an interview, "After I had my twins, I thought I would never work in entertainment again. I could barely shower, let alone make a TV show. One day I was rushing out the door to meet with a big production company in LA about creating a new comedy series. Babies were screaming, I was pumping breast milk while trying to draw my eyebrows, and I thought, this is funny. So I pitched them a comedy series about my new life as a mom. That show became the #1 Canadian series on Facebook Watch." As social media became more of a part of all of our lives, Jessi's online reach grew as well. Whether it was through her podcasts, video content, or her stand-up tours, she has taken control of her own career to immense success. In 2022, Jessi crossed Canada twice with her 2.5-hour show, Up Close and Too Personal. She originally planned to do the show for 2020, but the COVID-19 pandemic derailed that. This year, 2025, she's on her second comedy tour called Now That's What I Call Live Tour. Jessi called it a gift to the millennial brethren who grew up watching her.
The people who come out to my show are encouraged to dress up in their best millennial attire. So far I have seen head-to-toe velour tracksuits, low-rise jeans, very hideous fedoras, scarves, belts. I mean, we are bringing the 2000s back at my live show in a way that I never expected.
She has called touring the greatest joy of her career because it allows her to connect to the people who grew up watching her in person. It also gives her an appreciation for where she is in her own career.
A lot of these women are hardworking moms who are like having to hire babysitters, and they're going out for the first time in months. And I get to share an amazing night laughing and connecting with them. Like, God, I feel like that's my purpose. That's my joy.
Even with all of her success, Jessi has never forgotten the place that made her. Recently, she was offered a stand-up special in the United States, and the producers wanted her to film in Los Angeles, but she refused, and they shot in Canada instead.
And I had a moment standing on stage. I'm going to get emotional. Standing on stage, I got my 3 little kids at home. I'm still pumping breast milk for my baby. And yet somehow my stand-up special, this little thing that I created in my brain, has brought 40 crew members out from LA. I'm the reason that everyone in this room is working today. And that was one of the coolest moments in my career.
Part of that was national pride, but the other part was that for Jessi, no one produces better TV than Canada.
If you are a camera op, if you are a writer, if you are a assistant director, you are the best, not just in Canada, you're one of the best certainly in the world, because there are so few opportunities to make it in this country. If you're still working in this business, you got to be incredible. And I think that's why I have often been disappointed working in America with the quality and the talent level of the behind the scenes crew, because there are so many jobs. Anybody can do it. In Canada, unfortunately, there is so little work that if you are working in this business, you are fucking good.
And Jessi is still doing what she always loved to do, make comedy. And she gets to do it in a way she never thought possible decades ago, watching David Duchovny walk his dog.
The greatest gift of the internet and social media is that there is nobody telling you what you can and cannot post. When you grow up in broadcast television, all you hear are no's, right? Like, your job is to try to, certainly for me, my job is always to sort of push the boundaries.
I would like to thank Jessi Cruickshank for sharing her time with me. In 2 weeks, we will be back with another episode of Canadian History X Biography.
Well, it's hard to put your finger on it, but it's kind of like it's we're not really in your face in the way that other cultures are. We want you to come to us, I think. It's like, and it's in the. I think we're kind of in the middle of two very the dominant cultures, like America, and you have the UK. So I think we get the kind of in terms of musically speaking, we get the roots of all that American stuff, and then we get the sort of humor and melody and all that stuff that comes from the UK in a way.
I will be talking to musician Ron Sexsmith. This episode was written by myself, Craig Baird, and my executive producer, Dila Velasquez. Audio production by Rosalind Kufor and Rob Johnston. If this is your first time listening and you like what you heard, please take a moment and give us a 5-star review. And I love hearing from you. And if you have a show topic you want me to cover, you can email me at craig@canadaehx.com. You can also visit my website as well as my social media. I will include all of those in my show notes. Until next time, I'm Craig Baird, and this was Canadian History X.